welcome to all of you who have joined for today's discussion on Talking Films Online. Talking Films Online, or TFO in short, is an informal coming together of teachers, students, researchers, filmmakers, and cinephiles interested in cinema, more importantly, interested in talking and writing about cinema. The online group came together quite spontaneously during the pandemic and lockdown in June 2020, while Dr. Geeta Vishwanath from Baroda and I have been coordinating the activities of TFO since its inception. It would not have been possible without the enthusiasm of people who regularly join the discussion, like Tarakeshwar VB, Ajanta Sarkar, Yagnashri, Sridhar Modugu, Paniraj, Rajan Barrett, Nandini Manjrekar, Madhurima, Rasha, Gayatri, and so on. So far, we have organized 189 online discussions. In fact, today is the 190th online discussion that we will be having. And this includes weekly discussions on a pre-decided film, besides a few month-long film festivals and discussions, such as a short a French film festival that was curated by Abhijit Ranadibe, an Iranian film festival curated by Dr. Praveena Cooper, a Women's Cinema Festival curated by Soundarya Jain, an Adur Fest that was curated by VK Cherian, a Women's DocuFest, and recently we had a Green January 2024 where we discussed films on farmers. We've had as many as 185 discussants, including film scholars such as Madhav Prasad, Theodore Bhaskaran, Babu Subramanian, younger scholars such as Parichay Patra, Yamini Krishna, film critics like Saibal Chatterjee and Tanul Thakur, writers such as Amandeep Sandhu, Bhashwati Ghosh, scholars from different disciplines such as Devparna Roy, V. Krishnappa, and younger scholars like Bhageshri Trivedi. Filmmakers often have made their films exclusively available for TFO members to watch by generously sharing links to their films, and they have also joined in the discussion. We've had directors like Jayan Cherian, Girish Kasarwali, Adur Gopal Krishnan, Aparna Sen, Anjali Montero and KP Jayashankar, Karan Bali, Amul Palekar, Akshay Indikar, and Kesari Harvu. We also had P. Sainath join the discussion when we discussed a documentary in which he features. The TFO WordPress blog is also alive. We have had people send us their film reviews and articles, and we have been posting these on the blog regularly. Our WhatsApp group and Facebook group is a forum to share film-related information. And we have members sharing interesting articles, besides, of course, the information that Geeta and I post about the TFO events. This week, we have Dr. Rajakrishnan, who will be initiating discussion on the classic that continues to be a timeless masterpiece, 27 Down, which he suggested to TFO for discussion. Thanks also to VK Cherian sir for putting us in touch with Dr. Rajakrishnan. After a 35-year long teaching career, Dr. Rajakrishnan retired as professor at the Institute of English, University of Kerala, a recipient of the Senior Fulbright Fellowship of the US government between 2007 and 8, and the Faculty Research Fellowship of the Canadian government in 1998. He has contributed several articles to national and international journals. He was Professor Emeritus in 2011-13. He is winner of national and state awards for film direction, writing on cinema, and literary criticism in Malayalam, his native language. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And over to you. We are eagerly looking forward to your discussion on the film 27 Down. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, all of you. So this is my first experience of TFO, and hopefully this will lead to a meaningful interaction between me and all the participants. So this evening, I wish to revive the memory of a semi-forgotten classic in Indian cinema, 27 Down by Rajakrishnan Kaur. 27 Down won the award for the best Hindi film in the year 1974. And A.K. Beer, the cameraman of the film, won the award for the best cinematography. Unfortunately, Rajakrishnan Kaur met with a tragic death even before he came to know of the award that he was going to receive. In fact, there was something jinxed about this film as well as the novel on which this film was based, the one by Ramesh Bakshi, an experimental novel which had a different title, which was changed to 27 Down after the film won national and international acclaim. Ramesh Bakshi, it said that he drank himself to death. There was something tragic about his persona. He was one of the pioneers of the offbeat movement in Hindi literature. And this was a kind of trend-setting novel based on which Avadar Kaul made the film. And Avadar Kaul also met with a tragic death. So there was something jinxed about the novel as well as the film. The novel by Ramesh Bakshi was experimental in nature. He dedicated this novel to his sister with the assertion that he has written this novel with a great deal of anger against tradition, the strangling influence of tradition. In his novel, he tried to create a kind of form out of formlessness. You find him in his introduction, he refers to futurism and cubism. Throughout the novel, he has experimented in a big way with memory and time. And with associative memory, he tries to recreate the emotional landscape of a youngster who was weighed down by the oppressive burden of his father's influence, his father's tyrannical influence, rather. So the novel has the appearance of a cinematic collage, a cinematic montage, and it was easier for Avadar Kaul to make a film out of this montage-like novella. But in the movie, he has chosen a fairly straightforward form of narration in the place of the radical displacement of memory and time and space that you come across in the novel. For example, in the novel by Ramesh Bakshi, all the journeys undertaken by the principal character, Sanjay, are treated as one journey. And he has used several image motifs and several sound devices to connect these journeys. The novel is apparently formless. He has obviously drawn inspiration from the works of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce and attempted in his own way what's called the stream of consciousness technique. Obviously, a film cannot follow this expressive methods. So Avadar Kaul has chosen a more or less straightforward method of narration in the movie, interspersed with memory and dream and interior conversation. Again, this film had many firsts about it. This was the first film in which A.K. Beer cranked camera. He was only 22. His association was entirely with art films. This was the first feature film in which, he was the cameraman. It won him the national award. And there are some iconic shots in the film which have become part of our film history, so to say. Again, the way Avtar Kaul has reconstructed the star persona of Raki, that's another highlight of the film. Raki appears in this film not with her usual star image. She is the breadwinner of a middle class family, totally unglamorous. In fact, Jagi had some hesitation about acting in the film without her usual makeup. And A.K. Beer in his interviews has commented how it was difficult to shoot some of the scenes involving Iraqi inside the train because she was easily identified. So it was a rather difficult task to shoot scenes involving Iraqi and the main actor, Raina. Again, this was the first film in which M.K. Raina, a theatre artist, took up a role in film. Raina is still remembered for his marvelous performance in 27 Down. He is still identified with the character, the ticket checker, that he played with effortless ease in 27 Down. Of course, he moved from theatre to film and he has acted in several films. But he's still remembered primarily for the way he has played the role of the sensitive, introverted youth in 27 Down. Again, it was not an easy task for Avtar Kaul to finish this film. He ran out of resources, and the National Film Corporation came to his assistance. I mean, that was how he completed the film in 73. After his death, the film won a special jury prize at the Locarno Film Festival. This is considered a cult film which enjoys a special kind of admiration among film buffs. 27 Down is different from the mainstream Hindi cinema as well as most of the offbeat Hindi films in the sense that it has a psychological core at the heart of it. The film centers around the hesitations and ambiguities of a sensitive young man who was unable to grow out of the overpowering influence of his father. The film has a late beginning in the sense that it begins at a late point in action. You find Sanjay, played by M.K. Raina, sleeping inside a compartment. The train is moving fast, and you find him mumbling in his sleep. Is it a bridge? I think there is a bridge. There's a bridge here. And later we realize that the bridge connecting the present and the future, the bridge which symbolizes connectivity and mutual trust, is significantly amiss in his life. And then the flashback series starts. At this point, the camera moves back to the past. And what follows is a long stretch of flashback interspersed with memory and interior conversation. Sanjay was born inside a railway compartment. He was the son of a driver. He's called Anna throughout the film. His early childhood was far from being easy. He didn't learn to love or trust. Instead, he learned to obey and fear. he had a controlling father, a father who had a fixed outlook on life, a father who was rigid in his ways, a father who never showed any signs of love and affection towards his son. He grew under the overarching shadow of this father. Right from the opening scene of the flashback, we are made to realize how Sanjay was cowed down by fear growing under this father. His mother's death made him more lonely. Right from his early childhood, he learned to look upon the train with a sense of awe and fear and admiration. The train became a part of his life right from his early days. His father, Anna, lost one of his legs during an accident. And you find him walking, leaning on a stick. This walking stick becomes a kind of symbol, a symbol of parental authority and parental tyranny throughout the film. Again, here one has to make some comment about the casting, which Avtar Kaur has made with such superb discretion. The father's role is played by Shiv Ompuri, a well-known Hindi actor. His muscular body, his intense looks create a particular impression on the audience. Against him is pitted M.K. Raina with his sad smile, a small figure, lean, with an overwrought look in his face. So the contrast between the father and the son could not have been made more pronounced. So we find Sanjay growing up, imbibing these lessons of fear and obedience instead of love and trust. It's a lower middle class family, and they live in a colony earmarked for railway employees. Here we come across what's called in the novel a crying compartment, a bogie which somehow flew apart from the main body, an abandoned bogie near his house. Sanjay somehow establishes a kind of special relationship with his abandoned bogie. His own deeply divided self, his own split personality, somehow enters into a curious relationship with this abandoned bogie, which is in the vicinity. Sanjay grows up. He wants to be an artist. You find him taking up a course in art gallery in Bombay. There are some interesting shots which show him lost in the midst of the paintings and images in the art gallery. At one point, we are shown the statue of Venus with a broken arm. In Sanjay's mind, this Venus with a broken arm establishes a kind of curious relationship with the image of his father who had lost one of his legs in an accident. That connection is revived at a later point in the film also. So Sanjay is pursuing his study in art, but then his father had other plans about him. One day he is called back home. Anna wants him to join the railways. Sanjay tries to protest in his feeble way, but he is unable to articulate his protest. So next scene, we find him appearing as a ticket checker, clad in the uniform of a ticket checker. And that's a starting point of a new life for him. We find him traveling, incessantly traveling as a ticket checker. And there is a sad expression on his face. Introverted, totally withdrawn into himself, unable to enter into meaningful communication with other human beings. For Sanjay, this is a kind of escape mechanism. His job of a ticket checker and his life inside the train. It's possible to conjecture that the railway compartment is a kind of tomb for him. It's also a womb, It also marks his desire to get back to the peace and serenity of the womb. So that escape motive emerges prominently in the portrayal of Sanjay's life as a ticket checker. He casually comes across Shalini, who is an employee of the Life Insurance Corporation, a woman who carries the burden of a huge family, somewhat sophisticated, citified woman. She opens up a new world before him. They meet casually, but soon their relationship goes into something that's very intimate. You find him sharing some intimate moments in the art gallery, on the beach, etc. Shalini is somehow able to instill some measure of self-confidence in Sanjay, even though she is unable to fathom the full measure of his neurosis, his Oedipal agony. So Sanjay, you find Sanjay relishing some happy moments in the company of Shalini. There is a scene where they enter into physical intimacy inside the small house where she stays. But this is the only time we find Sanjay having taken a bold initiative in his life. Because throughout the film, we see him as a kind of cow-down, fear-stricken, oversensitive, introverted youngster who is unable to break through the barriers erected by his past. So this moment of physical intimacy, in a way, offers him the prospect of a liberation from his life. But even that doesn't last long. There is a character played by the well-known Hindi actor Sadhu Mehra, who is a friend of Sanjay's family, who tells Anna about Sanjay's adventures in the city, that he's carrying on with a sophisticated woman. They travel together, etc., etc. This gossip has the right effect on him. Under a false pretext, Anna calls him back. And Anna tells him point blank that he has decided upon his marriage. Sanjay tries to protest, but again, he is unable to articulate his protest. So he gets married to an uncouth woman from the countryside who brings in some buffaloes as a dowry. As they lie together, she has a rancid smell which he is unable to bear. Again, Yamuna, that's her name, has some inkling about Sanjay's previous affair. So she makes insinuations. He feels totally ill at ease in her company. At this point of time, you find Sanjay casually running into Shalini, his former love. In fact, Shalini had known all about his marriage. Somehow, she had got wind of his marriage. But then you find that Shalini has taken this news in a stoical way. In fact, she is a very mature woman, very mature and self-possessed woman. And she doesn't show any signs of annoyance or anger during their brief encounter. Sanjay realizes that he and Shalini have moved apart, that it's very difficult to pick up old threads, even though he has not fully lost his hope. His marital misery mounts day by day. The husband and wife are unable to find any meeting ground. So one day he writes a long letter to his wife and he leaves home. At this point, the flashback ends. So we have seen Sanjay on his way to Varanasi, Kashi, another journey of escape in which, he tries to find a new meaning in his life. At this point, the flashback breaks off and we are in the present moment. So you find him visiting the temple in Varanasi. Perhaps, one could wish that the director had further exploited the auditory and visual possibilities offered by Varanasi to throw light into his hero's state of mind. Here he comes across a person who takes him to a brothel. Sanjay is somewhat startled by the easy ways of the prostitute whom he encounters. Her easygoing manners, her total lack of self-consciousness, the way she giggles, the way she tries to seduce him. And you find Sanjay spending a night with her. Then we come across a dream. In this dream, Shalini and his wife come in search of him. You find him resurrecting before him in his dream. The dream sequence ends with the crashing sound of the image of the Venus with her half-broken arm. After his wife and Shalini, you see this image of Venus, which he had encountered in the art school in Bombay. So with this, hearing this crashing sound, he wakes up totally disoriented, full of sweat. This is a scene which signifies what we might call in Freudian parlance, the traumatic destruction of the father god. The crash of the statue of Venus, in a way, symbolizes the destruction of the image of the father god, because throughout he has associated this Venus statue with his father with his who has lost one of his legs. Again, he's staying in a lodge in Varanasi. We find him having a strange dream in which, he is found dead inside a compartment. A dream which could be taken as suggestive of his latent death wish. He goes back home because, he cannot go forward in life. He can only regress. He goes back home. By then, his father-in-law had brought in some more buffaloes. He had plans of starting a dairy farm. There's an interesting scene where the camera intersects between the close-up of the buffalo and the close-up of his wife, Yamuna, sleeping by his side. Sanjay tells himself, his father had turned him into a train. Now his wife has turned him into a buffalo. So out of sheer despair or disgust, he decides to leave home. Then you find him meeting with Shalini. He is desperately trying to pick up old threads. Shalini is somewhat evasive. He once again goes to her house, the small house where she stays. We watch Shalini trying to hide the picture of a young man from his sight. Sanjay tells her he wants to start it all over again. Shalini is non-committal. However, she agrees to meet him the other day at a particular station. In the last sequence, we find Sanjay traveling inside the train. The train is moving fast. Sanjay is full of anticipation, but he fails to find Shalini in the station where she was supposed to wait for him. The train moves on. Here is a moment of recognition, an ultimate moment of self-confrontation for Sanjay. All his life he has been running. Now he wants to sit down. This is his ultimate moment of recognition. The film ends with a freeze shot of Sanjay. This is the outline of the film. I'm sure all of you have watched the film and entered into its harrowing thematic center. So this is a film about what you call the conflict of generations. This is a film about the tug of war between tradition and modernity. Again, if you're trying to place the film in context, the story apparently takes place in the first half of the decade of the 1960s. That was the time when the institution of the family and the patriarchal social culture as a whole were under tremendous pressure. Modern ideas of friendship and love and marriage were slowly undermining our traditional social structures. This film partly reflects this conflict. Sanjay, who grew up in a semi-rural atmosphere, who grew up under a patriarchal system, is suddenly exposed to the life in Bombay, which throws up new possibilities for him. There he encounters Shalini, the citified woman, who promises liberation from his traumatic, uh, condition. But he is unable to realize this prospect of freedom because he is weighed down by a sense of inferiority and a sense of guilt, and he is unable to break the stranglehold of parental tyranny. So, in a way, this film reflects the kind of transformation that rocked the traditional Indian social structure with the advent of modernity in the post-independence decades. That's a kind of sociological perspective into the, the thematic core of the film. Again, this film, to all those who are interested in literature, would read like a kind of homage to Franz Kafka, because there is so much in common between Kafka's personal life, what happened in Kafka's personal life, and Sanjay's own private world. This nerve-wracking relationship with one's father, this painful relationship with one's father, which one is unable to outgrow. That sums up the tragedy of both Kafka, and there are shades of Kafka in the film, so to say. I'm not sure if Ramesh Bakshi was conscious of it or if Avadar Kaul was conscious of it when he made the film. But this Kafka's element is deeply embedded in the thematic structure of the film. Kafka, at the age of 30, writes a letter to his father in which he says, "All my writings are about you. My entire literary career was a long leave-taking prose from you." Sanjay also writes a letter, not to his father, but to his wife, expressing all his self-doubts. "I am going, I don't know where. I don't know about my destination, but I'm leaving." So both Sanjay and Kafka, in a way, are the victims of what might be called a negative father obsession. A negative father obsession. In Sanjay's case, Shalini offered a way out. She symbolized a kind of freedom, liberation from all the fears that pull him down, that weigh him down. But then he is unable to make this leap of faith because he's far too fear-stricken. He's far too introverted. And so the film ends on an ambiguous note. Apparently, we are left to conjecture about Sanjay's future. No, actually, there is no future before him. He has burned all his bridges. Apparently, he cannot go back home. And then there's no question of, Shalini agreeing to start a new life with him. So what will happen to him is left to our guess. So the film ends on a note of profound ambiguity, which sums up all the tragic elements which are concentrated in the story structure. Now, coming to the realization of this theme in the film, the most remarkable aspect of the film is its cinematography by AKB, which has won great admiration from film critics. AKB, in his subsequent interviews, had narrated how difficult it was to shoot inside the train with Jackie as the principal actress. Again, he has spoken of a moment in which he virtually risked his life to create a shot. He has also acknowledged the influence of the canonical film, The Battle of Algiers, in his camera style. That mix of newsreel and documentary, which characterizes the cinematic style in Battle of Algiers. Of course, this is a different kind of film. It's much more internal. I mean, much more subjective, much more internal. But still, A.K. Beer has acknowledged the influence of the Battle of Algiers in his camera style. There is an iconic shot in the film which has been much commented upon by critics. It's a top angle shot. There, a local train comes near the platform. People hurriedly get out of the train. Soon the platform is filled with people. How fast, how quickly the platform turns into a sea of passengers. Again, another sidelight of the film is the way this provides a glimpse into what could be called the lonely crowd, which was growing in the suburban city by 1960s. Here you catch several glimpses of the faceless, anonymous crowd which became a feature of the urban reality by 1960s. Of course, the focus is always on Sanjay, on his interior landscape. Still, you come across several shots of travelers. Alongside the aimless drift of Sanjay, you also come across the shots of travelers who get into the train, travel to their place of work, and go back home. There is a sense of fatigue, a kind of despairing look on their faces. Not even a single smiling face you can come across in this crowd. So whether the director really meant it or not, you catch glimpses of the lonely crowd which became a part of our urban reality by 1960s in the film. I repeat, the focus is always on Sanjay, but the way the journey inside the train has been portrayed allows you several side glimpses into the kind of people who travel by train, especially lower middle class, people without an anchorage, people who are simply drifting without any sense of sustaining faith or belief. Another comment on the music of the film done by Chaurasya. His melodious flute throws into sharp relief the inner turmoil of Sanjay. It's arguable whether the film demanded a different kind of musical score, which is built upon dissonance rather than melody or harmony. That's a point of dispute, whether the music should have been so much serene, so melodious, or should the music have captured something of the turmoil that goes on inside Sanjay's psyche? That's a matter of opinion. If one were to look deep into the film, one might arrive at a few more conclusions. After returning from USA, after taking a course in film studies in New York University. He joined the crew of Avtar Kaul joined the team of a commercial movie called Bombay Talkies. It's possible to see, signs of his association with the mainstream film in some parts of the movie. For example, the way zoom in and zoom out have been used. In another place, you find Sanjay having a verbal duel with his wife. He slaps her. Then you have a free shot. This records to free shot. This happens at more than one point in the film. So it's possible to maintain that some of the habits that he picked up while working in a mainstream movie had lingered on this film, even though the overall impression given by the film is that of a director who has imbibed the new trends in post-war European cinema. Undoubtedly, this is an offbeat film, an experimental offbeat film. Even though it's possible to find certain cliches as well as certain stylistic devices, which smack of the influence of the mainstream film. Somebody has commented that had he lived longer, he would have made films which stand between the commercial cinema and the art cinema. This again is a doubtful proposition. I do think that in terms of his raw genius, Avtar Kaul takes after Satyajit Ray. Another critic has commented that he was the most promising, most talented director since Ray. This might be an exaggeration, but there is no doubt about the fact that the promise which was left unfulfilled in his debut film could have taken him to newer heights, greater heights. So this Jinx film, with its harrowing theme of father-son conflict, its unresolved sense of tragedy, would always remain a class apart in Indian cinema. Indian cinema, it is not easy to come across, such psychological dissection, such interior probing. Maybe with the notable exception of a film like Anandaram by Adur Gopalakrishnan. Of course, part of the strength of the film lies in the novella on which it was based, the Dinesh Bakshi's novella. And one more comment about the protagonist or the agonist, so to say, Sanjay. Why he is named Sanjay? The film as well as the novel contains several echoes from Mahabharata. As a child, Sanjay is seen listening to the slogas from Mahabharata recited by his father. Like Sanjay in Mahabharata, our Sanjay is only an observer. He can never be a participant. He can only be an onlooker. He can never be a participant. He stands outside of life, so to say. He's an onlooker, an observer. He can never be a participant. At one point, in the novel, in Devesh Bakshi's novel, at one point, Sanjay's howl of pain rises to a crescendo. He says, "You take away my armies from you. I stand alone. You can take away my armies from you. I stand alone here." He is identified with, at that point, he is identified with Arjuna in Mahabharata. So our Sanjay is the new incarnation of the original Sanjay in Mahabharata. Again, it's a matter of debate to what extent this film appeals to the new generation. Because the old tug of war between tradition and modernity, the father son conflict, maybe these are all things of the past. The younger generation in India, which is used to freedom, liberty, maybe they will find it difficult to empathize with Sanjay because his conflicts belong to a bygone age. Still, I think this conflict happens in every family in one form or another. It's true that this new generation is in India as well as in other countries is much more libertarian, less concerned about the opinion of the father or the mother when it comes to the question of choosing a spouse. In friendship, in marriage, in love, our youngsters think radically different from Sanjay. That's a fact of life. At the same time, there is something perennial, there is something universal about this film. Because what happens inside the four walls of the family of Sanjay in a different form can happen in any family, you know, in India or abroad. Sanjay epitomizes a particular a kind of sensitivity, we'll call it oversensitivity, which still can burden, uh, the heart of a young man who is caught between two worlds. I mean, who is caught between dream and responsibility. Sanjay's difficulty is that he is unable to make a break, I mean, make a break in life, to take a decision, to take a bold decision. Because he has been so much weighed down by parental tyranny. Maybe that kind of family structure is a thing of the past. At the same time, you still have, youngsters undergoing in some form of other the familial pressure, this struggle with the father image, the struggle with the prototype of, I mean, and the archetypal paternal image. That conflict, still lingers in our family in one form or another. So whether Sanjay's story is repeated in the same form in our families or not is another question. But I still think that, his traumas, his personal tragedy can still find a resonance in modern day India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, Dr. Rajakrishnan, for giving us a very interesting response to the film, both in terms of a close reading of the narrative as well as the formal and aesthetic aspects of the film. The film is now open for discussion. If anyone wants to come in at this point and respond, you're most welcome. Maybe I'll just get the discussion going while others gather their thoughts. It was wonderful listening to you drawing parallels between this film and Kafka's life. Also, this Freud analysis of this film in the Freudian framework and all that. I was thinking of two points while after I watched the film. One, I was thinking of this set of films that came between 1960s and probably till the emergency, till probably 1975, when we can see very clear critique of tradition in the kind of stranglehold that tradition has on the characters. I don't see, such unambiguous critique of tradition later. In this film, in fact, I thought it goes a step further because this character is so tied to modernity. Not that modernity has answers. I mean, if one thinks of the train as a kind of symbol of modernity, not that it has answers for him. In fact, it seems to just be a way of running away. But I think unwittingly he veers towards, or maybe not so unwittingly, he veers towards modernity, and it's clearly a critique of tradition that emerges. The second point that I was thinking of was how this film understands choice and the nature of man-woman relation, like vis-a-vis Adur's, let's say, Swayamvaram. So which is also about choice, about a young couple coming together, and the kind of difficulty that Sita kind of undergoes, having to bear the consequences of her choice. Here we don't see Shalini go through any of those. There is nothing else that happens. In fact, but there is a sense that what happened to these two characters. The same bond of love which holds her back, holds Shalini back, makes her introduce Sanjay as nothing more than a married colleague, probably a co-worker to her grandfather. So it's a bond of love. It's not the fear that we see that exists between father and son, but nevertheless, that is also in some ways. In fact, while watching the film, I thought that this sounds almost like a revenge moment where Sanjay is a kind of taking it out by going ahead with the marriage because of the way she refused to reveal their relationship when she took him home. So what gets cast as a bond of love, in the case of Shalini, I think is no less tyrannical than what happens with Sanjay. Yeah, so these are just a couple of random thoughts, sir, on the film. You're most welcome to intervene anytime, sir, during the discussion. Or we can also open it out to others to come in. If you want to speak, please unmute yourselves. There is someone who has unmuted.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
please go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, please go ahead.
my name is Prabhu. Let me first congratulate Rajakrishnan for his excellent analysis. In particular, I would like to keep in mind that it's a debut film, so certain things one need to overlook. His point on music was extremely valid because it jars with the theme and the mood of the film. And even the first song where children are singing something, it is right out of any Bollywood movie. It doesn't make sense. Just because train is there, song about the train doesn't make sense. Having said that, there are 2 points I want to slightly differ from what he said. The Venus, the broken Venus, what he shows, probably it is not as much connected with his father as his lack of relationship with any meaningful relationship with women. He has 3 relationships, one very brief, but nevertheless, one with Shalini, other one with Yamuna, and the last one with one night stand with some girl. In all the 3 is unable to communicate, unable to express anything. He cannot form any relationship with any of them. One as a friend, one as a wife, and another one probably only for sex. Even there, he is unable to communicate anything. So the more to the point is his lack of female touch in his life. Second, what Rajakrishnan mentioned about the crowd and the lonely crowd, that makes a lot of sense. He moves in the crowd all the time as a train collector, and then moves with his friends and so on and so forth. But he is unable to have any communication with anyone which deserves any seriousness. So I thought these two things are lack of communication, then lack of female touch, and Raja Krishnan sir, I don't agree with your Sanjay Mahabharata thing. Just the name matches all right, but it is bit far fetched and it doesn't match any of those things, because there are no corroborative things. There is nothing is strengthened. It is just, I think it is just a coincidence of the name, and it is not in any case strengthened by any thing later. But as a movie in its time, it is a great achievement, because if you had seen any Bollywood movies of those years or even now, they have never come anywhere near this. Even after 50, 70 years, we have been producing only stupid movies most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I too thought of the broken hands image, not so much in association with the father, but in fact, when he sees Shalini in the train with her hands actually full of the things that she's carrying, that is the first time he recollects the broken image, that she is also handless. So somehow I associated with the Shalini rather than the father. But as you said, it could be a symbol of his lack of meaningful relationships with the women. Sir, Rajakrishnan sir, would you like to respond? Or should we?
Oh, sure. Thank you for your comments and criticism. Coming to the name Sanjay, actually references to Mahabharata are deeply embedded in the original text, the novella by Ramesh Pakshe. Obviously, it's not possible to carry forward this reference in the cinema, it will look awkward. Ramesh Pakshe has made it clear that he had there was a conscious intention behind naming his protagonist as Sanjay. He's only an onlooker. In his long introduction to the novel, Ramesh Pakshe has said, my protagonist is like the original Sanjay, he's only an onlooker. He can never be a participant. And as I said, at one point the film, that stretched out cry from his heart, it rises into a howl when he says, take away all the armies from you. I stand alone in the battlefield. So the parallel with Arjuna is hinted at, So this Mahabharata references are deeply embedded in the text, even though, they're not sustained in the film. It's not possible, simply not possible to sustain them in the film. I agree with that. Secondly, on the question of the mutilated statue of Venus, yeah, I do hold that, some kind of connection is formed in his mind between the broken statue of Venus and the image of his father who has lost his leg in an accident. The scene in the prostitute's house, where he wakes from his nightmare full of sweat, listening to the crashing sound of the image of Venus, that truly signifies, as far as I can see it, the traumatic destruction of the Father God. That's one moment when he experienced a kind of liberation from what has been holding him back all his life, The levity, the easy manners of the prostitute suddenly jolt him out of his jailed existence, For him, it's a kind of new exposure. And again, it's an act of negation also. Sanjay, who had grown up, listening to the slogas from Mahabharata, here you find him sleeping with a prostitute. So that means a denial of the past, denial of all that he had been taught, all that had been drilled into his psyche right from his childhood days. That's the way I look upon it, So the connection between the image of the Venus and father, to me, it's somewhat, they're correlated. Maybe if you think otherwise, it's possible to interpret in another ways. It's quite possible.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think I have answered your questions. Mm.
Yeah.
For the question of Sanjay, I fully agree with the gentleman who asked the question. These references are not sustained in the film. It's not possible to, carry forward these references in the film, but they are embedded in the text. The parallel with Sanjay, the reference to Arjuna, etc., etc.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Geeta, please go ahead. Geeta, you've raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Nikhila. And thank you, sir, for your analysis of the film. In terms of craft, I agree it is, a very well-made film. But somehow I could not really sympathize with the character of Sanjay much, because I felt that, a person who was totally spineless when it came to his relationship with his father did not think twice about, just riding roughshod over the women in his life. In fact, the character of the three women, those have been really beautifully drawn in the narrative. There is not too much of sentimentality, and they seem to be quite sorted, these three women. They know exactly what to expect from a relationship like that, and how to deal with the disappointments in that relationship. So this Sanjay, in his, I don't know, quest for what, going to Benares and all of that, but his treatment of women makes him totally a character I did not much appreciate.
Yeah, I fully get your point, The point is, his entire personality was strangulated right from the beginning under the oppressive burden of his father, he could not develop his personality. He always remained a thoroughly introverted, oversensitive person, suffering from a sense of inferiority, a sense of inadequacy. His greatest difficulty is to accept himself, self-acceptance. That's the most difficult thing for him. Well, on the question of empathizing with, that's an entirely different thing, The point is, he symbolizes a particular generation in India, so to say. Maybe the generation is gone now. It's possible to argue that your family structure has undergone a sea change. It won't be, easy to find people like Sanjay in our midst. But then that's also a factor for social history, especially children growing up in rural India. Many of them suffered from a similar fate. You can think of Kafka, even though we have entered into his death anniversary. It's 100 years since he died. Kafka, throughout his life, he was unable to grow out of the shadow of his father. He broke his engagement with Regina, etc. Throughout his life, I agree with you. Not many will in today's India will empathize with the kind of childlike awe that Sanjay feels towards his father. But then you have to think of the tug of war between tradition and modernity, which characterize our culture, our social life over the last half century, so to say. Yeah, Sanjay represents the post-independence generation, which in many ways, carried the traumas, the lingering doubts of the previous generation. The story apparently takes place in the first half of the 1960s. And in that sense, he's a representative. Yes.
So, would you like to speak? You're unmuted, Prabhu sir.
Yeah. Just I mean, from a couple of points you people mentioned. See, he meets three women. One you call tradition, I mean, sophisticated woman or mature woman. The second one is traditional woman who is interested in looking after him, feeding him, and so on. The third one, as somebody rightly mentioned, about levity and also physical aspects of relationship. In none of these things he is able to relate. He is not able to relate to the first one because, I mean, half he relates, but he cannot form it fully. Second one, he doesn't like. The third one, he is unable to even smile at the levity or the jokes or whatever she makes. So I feel he is born with certain, or he grew up with certain tragic flaw. Even if the novel continues for another 20 years, the right thing would be that he will never form any good relationship. But I have only one small difference between the previous speaker. While he is not a person I would have admired, but definitely sympathize, because it seems to be beyond him to do anything. He is almost born with a tragic flaw, and he is doomed to fail. I mean, this is the feeling I get. He tries his best, but he is unable to do anything because of either circumstances or because of his own things from the beginning. Even in education, he is unable to oppose his father. So that is deep-rooted flaw in his personality itself. So I do have sympathy for such thing. And only one thing, Sir Rajakrishnan, I doubt whether it is only connected with the time of the thing, whether it is 60s, now modernity. No, this is deeply individualistic, and you also mentioned in some context it is I mean, if not perennial, it is something happens all the time in the slightly different ways or the other. The patriarchy and also the urge to control somebody else's life never leaves many people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to come in now? Please unmute yourselves so I know that you want to speak. Rasha, Madhurima. Yeah, please go ahead, Madhurima.
Yeah, I don't really have a comment to the film because many of the things that are being discussed now, I didn't really think about it while watching the film. But the film was very interesting to me because I have not watched a film of that time. Maybe I have watched one or two, but very less. One thing that interested me how this Indian Railways becomes almost like a character in the film, and I felt that there is an importance on this nationalized institutions like the LIC, the Indian Railways, and how they become related to the idea of modernity and the perception of the characters. Other than that, I'm more looking forward to listening the discussion. Thank you. And thank you, sir, for recommending the film to us.
Okay. Thanks, Madhurima. Yes, anyone else? Tarakeshwar, Sridhar? Oh, Sridhar is not there, I think. Tarakeshwar?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I think the film is quite interesting, but if you want to look at it from today's current academic debates and trends, you can find fault with it. But apart from that, it looks like more a kind of modernist fiction, and the film based on it. So, as the earlier discussions have pointed out, a strong individualist notion is stressed. So there is a playing out of community versus individual. Here, the father comes as a kind of representative of the community or tradition, if you want. You can also look at it as tradition. And then this individual. So this individual is unable to assert himself. But it is quite interesting that all the three women could do it. They could take decisions in spite of the reeling under quote unquote tradition or patriarchy or communities. So they've all carved out their own existence. Of course, the first woman who comes in his life is quite independent. She has taken up the burden of handling the family and also have a kind of forge a kind of relationship with him within those parameters. Though she doesn't want to reveal it, what she could do best within that structure, patriarchal structure, she's doing it. Or familiar structure, she's doing it. And the second woman, without knowing this fellow, marries him and then she tries to handle him. She accepts that he had a relationship earlier and still try to mend the relationship, but it doesn't happen. Then he leaves. When he comes back, she also accepts him. She can understand him. She can also empathize with him. She can think what is happening to him. So in that sense, they'll all look like capable of thinking and taking decision, while he is unable to take any decision. He desires something, but is unable to execute it. He commits himself to the pressure of the community or the tradition, and then he feels miserable. So in that sense, he has that kind of tragic flaw. So in that sense, it looks like a kind of tragedy to us. But of course, it doesn't end in tragedy. It looks like optimistic, where he's trying to assert himself and then leave that marriage and then seek what he wanted. But it is also the question of what happens to the woman woman whom he is married. What is her fate? So we don't look at her as individual. So the entire this modernist plot is focusing on making this fellow assert his individuality at the end, or evoke our sympathy for this tragic flaw that he has. So in that sense, this completely modernist, but again from the gender point of view, from today's vantage point, we can have some problems with it. But I think in 60s, 70s, this was in literature, in many of the Indian languages. And then the film based on that, obviously trying to fashion a kind of new language to portray this individual existential crisis. That's what I think. Thank you for the film and the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Tarakeshwar. Sir, any response?
Yeah, sure. See, from Hamlet to Sanjay, you have a long series of protagonists, who are driven by self-doubt, who are driven by self-questioning, what you call paralysis of will, inability to make a leap into faith. You find a long line of protagonists from Hamlet to our poor Sanjay. That had been the long tradition in European literature, as well as probably in Indian literature also. It's another thing. Secondly, I do agree with the fact that Yamuna, his wife, is a kind of caricature. She, with her rancid smell and with her buffaloes as dowry and her resemblance to buffalo, she's more of a caricature. She doesn't empathize with him. She is never able to understand him at all. There is no meeting point between. They're a total mismatch. She is shown as an illiterate, she's a devotee, Sai devotee, she's illiterate, she's unable to comprehend her husband's dilemma, is unable to empathize with him. She is a near caricature. So that way there is absolutely no contact point between Sanjay and his wife. But the prostitute and Shalini, in their different ways, they offer a way out. I mean, not I won't call it liberation or freedom, but Shalini, surely, despite the fact that she also carries the burden of a huge family, etc. But she is a citified youth, uh, and she is mature, she is independent, she is responsible, and there's a stoical calm about her. She is able to accept the fact of his marriage with a sense of serenity, so to say. I mean, even though she is unable to go with him to start a new life. At that point, she breaks up. That's why he is unable to find Shalini at the station. So these three women affect him in three different ways. But his basic problem lies with, his early childhood. I mean, he's obsessed childhood days, the way he grows up under the overarching shadow of his tyrannical father. As I told you, this is made quite cinematic by the contrast between Shiv Ompiri and Raina. Shiv Ompiri with his muscular body and Raina with his, is a small person with a sad smile, fair complexion, small, he doesn't speak much, he has an introverted look, etc. So the contrast could not have been more obvious. So the choice of actors also, that's also near perfect, so to say. So whether 27 down can happen in the modern society, that's a different question altogether. But as somebody has pointed out, this kind of conflict, there is something perennial, something universal about it, in one form or another, As somebody has said, as long as there are fathers and sons, like again, there was a title of a famous novel by Turgenev, Fathers and Sons. This is an eternal, ageless, universal conflict between father and son. There's not a single family in the world which is, totally free from this tug of war, this tussle, this conflict, so to say. Here, it's given a newer dimension by linking it to the conflict between tradition and modernity in the Indian context in the post-independence decade. That's a fact. But this ultimate father-son conflict, this had been a perennial theme in world literature. I mean, right from the days of Greek tragedy, So it's possible to see it as a newer version of this age-old theme, this universal theme, so to say. So whether the present-day generation can fully enter into Sanjay's psyche and empathize with him, that's a matter of opinion. I've talked to several youngsters, who are unable to sort of sympathize with his lack of spirit, his lack of initiative, so to say. But then you have to place him in his context, He coming from a lower middle class family, Dalit family. I mean, how he was weighed down by this oppressive burden right from his childhood days. It's not easy to, overcome this kind of legacy, so to say, this kind of burden, which virtually crushed him, which virtually crushed him. That's what we see in the film. So whether you look upon Sanjay as a protagonist or as a victim or as a martyr, that's a different thing. But Sanjay I'm sure will continue to haunt our consciousness, will continue to linger in our mind as the representative of a generation which was caught between, so to say, two cultures, two different kinds of ethos.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to respond? Okay. If there are no more responses, sir, let me thank you for suggesting this wonderful film to Talking Films Online. and also for giving us this wonderful overview. It's late in the day. I hope we have not kept you waiting too long for
Oh,
our
no, 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 no.
discussion.
I really enjoyed your responses.
Thanks to everyone who joined the discussion. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we always meet at 9 p.m. on Saturdays, and we will share the link to the film that we are discussing on that week. So please join us for discussion in future as well. So thank everyone. Have a good night and happy weekend.
Good
Thank you,
night,
sir.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.